Let's start with the joke of the day. Where did Noah keep his bees? In his archives. His archives. Hives, bees, Noah, ark. Okay, there we go. We're moving on. Fantastic stuff. The business of America. Concepts. What is normalcy and why do Americans want to return to normalcy? How did Presidents Harding and Coolidge promote this? How can one relate the Teapot Dome incident to the Gilded Age? Explain how the car industry impacted society in the 1920s. Which parts of society were largely affected by the economic boom in the 1920s? What is an economic bubble? Why was credit a signal that the 1920s was an economic bubble, not an economic boom? Key vocab, Teapot Dome scandal, installment plan, which is really big in this unit and the next, and then finally urban sprawl. Let's talk about normalcy and what it is and why do people want to return to it. The Progressive Era and World War I are the two things leading up to this idea of return to normalcy. So the Progressive Era has challenged the establishment. It challenges business. It challenges the way things are. It's challenging the norm. World War I comes along and it's devastation. 1914 is when it begins. 1917 is when the U.S. joins. It ends in 1918. With the conclusion of 1918, of World War I, people want to get back to a simpler life. They've sacrificed, they've given up, many people have given their lives, so they want to get back to what life was like before everything was challenged. In the end, this is exactly what President Harding promises the American people. He takes office after Woodrow Wilson, and he's going to promise this return to normalcy, which is really attractive for those people that, for many of whom were being challenged with the progressive ideals. The progressive era is going to come to an end. It just never gets its feet underneath them as the same as it was. We will still see the norm be challenged at different times, but it doesn't have the same steam coming out of the progressive era as it did prior to World War I. What we're going to see then is a very pro-business type of era that follows the progressive era and World War I. This is a return to normalcy, after all, since capitalism had such a strong foothold leading into, or post-Civil War, really. Now the question remains out there, what's going to happen with this pro-business era? It was very pro-business leading up to the 1900s. That era was called the Gilded Age. So, would we see another Gilded Age? One could argue it did look like there was going to be a continuation of the Gilded Age. Harding's administration and his friends, they participated in corruption. Albert Fall was someone that is responsible for the Teapot Dome scandal. He lined his own pockets because he worked with an oil company and basically gave them some favors to give himself a lot of money. Whether or not one would see it as another Gilded Age, to each their own, but the pro-business mindset was back, and that would also continue after Harding's death with the promotion of Calvin Coolidge. Pro-business was going to continue throughout the 1920s. So in this pro-business era of the 1920s, how would it impact society? And it impacts society in a number of ways. Nothing may have been more impactful than the automobile. Henry Ford's assembly line changes the way automobiles are made. It's going to make them cheaper and they're made more efficiently. That's going to allow more cars to get into the hands of more citizens. When that happens, there's much more movement that occurs. People from rural areas are going to be able to visit the cities. We're going to see the United States start investing in paved roads, and that's how Route 66 comes into being. Houses with garages, houses with driveways come into existence. Gas stations are going to be needed. You have repair shops that are introduced because cars need repairs. Motels, shopping centers, public garages, traffic signals, people going on vacation. This is all new and all made possible because of the automobile. And then we see urban sprawl. Urban sprawl is where cities are starting to spread outward instead of rising up. Why? Because you can move further away. Things, things that are further away are more accessible because of the automobile. In World War I, we see the introduction of airplanes, and at this point in time, airplanes are still in its infancy. They're mostly used for mail, but we're starting to see a pretty significant growth in what airplanes are doing, or at least what we see as far as what is capable in regards to airplanes. In 1926, we start to see transatlantic flights. Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart make names for themselves with airplanes. Their usage, cargo and commercial airlines are starting to be introduced, and all this is going to be really key for the use of airplanes, the heavy use of airplanes that we witness in World War II. Another major area of note is the impact of electricity, and the electrical conveniences that come with that are pretty amazing. This really impacts housewives inside the home. We have another lecture coming up on women where we dive more into what is happening during the time and their impact on society. But inside the home, electrical conveniences are reshaping a number of things. For starters, just what now can be done with the use of electricity: vacuums, washing machines, sewing machines, refrigerators, toasters. There's a lot of devices now done or now using electricity that are going to speed up a lot of processes inside the home, and it's going to allow for more community activities, more leisure time for families during that day and age. It's also going to help with urban sprawl and help cities grow outward instead of remaining so congested. And this is going to happen in cities throughout the nation. Another area of note is advertising. Advertising had been around, but it mostly was an FYI to people about what the product that you're advertising is and the prices, so they knew. But this is the beginning of a change in how advertising is viewed. There are now psychological studies being done on how to attract people to a product that you're selling. Not just notify people of it, but how to actually get them to buy into your product and then buy your product. Two more items we're going to look at regarding business, and the first is the production of goods. And during this time, there are a lot of goods being produced, and that is often a very good thing. We see ups and downs with it. There is a lot of high demand. There is high demand for a lot of goods, and that's usually very good. It helps drive the economy. And because of that high demand, we get increased production. That production is trying to meet the needs of people. This allows businesses to expand, to grow, businesses to merge, all very often positive things. One of the initial struggles with the expansion of businesses in these different areas, the automobile is a good example, is there are going to be some old businesses that suffer. The manufacturing of steel and the use of iron, they're going to decrease. In railroads, the use of railroads are going to decrease to a degree. So those businesses suffer. And one of the reasons why that is the case is because of the popularity and availability of the automobile. So we see new businesses emerge, and because of that, we're going to see some old businesses start to retract. With that said,
we'll touch on this again when we get to the Great Depression, but farmers are going to see a great advancement in their machinery. We have the Industrial Revolution to thank for that. This is really good during World War I when there's an increased demand for the production of food. But when World War I comes to an end, farmers can produce more food, can grow more crops, but again, there's now a decrease of demand because there's no more war, and we'll find out that causes big issues too. Finally, everything looks really good economically for the United States in the 1920s and for many, many people, not everybody, but for many. One question should be looming though is how do people pay for all these goods, these services, the electricity that are in existence at the time? And the answer to that question is credit, especially easy credit, in the form of installment plans. These plans allow people to borrow money, and it's not hard to borrow money at this time. They go out and buy whatever goods they feel they need or just plain old want, get them into their home, use them, and it's a time where people are not concerned with the future, and we see this all the time when easy credit is available. It's about the here and now. They borrow money, they spend that money, and they don't have a plan of action to pay for the items that they've already purchased with credit. And it's going to catch up with Americans and much of the world in the at the very end of the 1920s when the stock market crashes and we get a glimpse that the Great Depression is around the corner. And that's all we're going to touch on regarding the business of America. So we'll see you next time. Bye.